My name is Casey Hersch. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, author, and founder of LightYourSparkle.life. Today I'm here with a very special guest, Melora Hardin. She's known for her portrayal of Jan Levinson on the NBC series The Office. She was Emmy nominated in 2016 for her role of Tammy Cashman on Amazon's Golden Globe winning comedy Transparent. This year, she wrapped up the 5th and final season of the freeform series The Bold Type, where she starred as Jacqueline Carlisle. And we just saw her compete in the 30th season of ABC's Dancing with the Stars, where she made it to the semifinals with her professional partner, Artem. In 2022, she is going to be releasing a docuseries called Thunder, Hunter, and Me. Many years ago, Melora played the role as Cindy in a series called Thunder. Thunder's a horse. And there was a young girl named Hunter who was watching the series and always wished that Melora's character Cindy could come through the television screen and rescue her because Hunter was going through some trauma. Many years later, Melora and Hunter met and their relationship cultivated this lovely docuseries all about how to help people who are going through trauma and how to talk to them about it. And so this will be coming out in 2022, and we're going to be talking to Melora about what went into the series and about her relationship with Hunter and how that helped transcend trauma. Let's get started. Melora, thank you for spending time with me today.
You're very, very welcome. I'm happy to be here.
And before we get started, if we can take a moment, I want to share with you why I reached out to you.
Okay.
So I'm a psychotherapist, a Latin ballroom dancer, and a patient who lives with an autoimmune illness called Crohn's disease, complicated by a history of childhood trauma. I was particularly drawn to your journey on Dancing with the Stars because you captured the essence of a relatable human in her 50s, challenging herself by trying something new that provokes vulnerability, tests physical limits, and unlocks judgments about body image, aging, and emotional honesty. However, when I learned about your work on the docuseries Thunder, Hunter, and Me, I felt so grateful that you were normalizing conversations about trauma and showing the strength of authentic relationships to heal. And I just had to learn more. So like you, I'm passionate about giving voice to childhood trauma and helping people transform their traumas into opportunities for post-traumatic growth. And the relationship between my childhood trauma and the development of Crohn's disease compelled me to write a book called Running on a Broken Foot, where I show people through intimate episodes in my own life how my childhood adverse experiences laid a foundation for mental and physical illness in my adult life. However, as you've shared about your work with Hunter, I too emphasize how to help people find strength from their trauma and to get unstuck so they can thrive in the present. And in my case, ballroom dance and the relationships with a few people in my life who showed me, I see you, I get you, changed the course of my illnesses. And the parallels between your dancing journey and your relationship with Hunter really drew me to you. And today I want to dive deeper into some of my observations and inspire others through your journey.
Oh, how beautiful. Well, thank you. That's such a beautiful, you made me emotional. That's very beautiful.
Well,
Way to welcome me on your show. That's really lovely.
I appreciate you as well. So we're going to hopefully talk about some of these things that are, I think, really dear to you, but also dear to me. So it's mutual.
That's great.
So I know your docuseries Thunder, Hunter, and Me will be available to the public in the near future.
Hopefully in 2022 we'll have it out for everybody to see.
Okay.
That's the idea.
Awesome. And in the meantime, I've listened to what you've said about the story, and you share that after sensing Hunter's struggles with close relationships, you asked Hunter if she was a victim of rape. And, you know, your courage in asking Hunter these difficult and honest questions is really what all of us should be doing with each other. We should be asking the question, what happened to you? So what advice can you give to people who are struggling to bring up these difficult conversations?
Well, I think that first of all, I think there's a really important piece here. which is that Hunter was asking me for my help from the beginning of the conversation. She was calling me, and the way she couched it was, I want to ask you some questions, and I can't think of anyone else to ask these questions to but you. So that put me into a position of being able to understand that she was ready to hear my answers. She invited me to really connect to my truth, and I'm trained to feel my instincts in a very deep way. That's what I do for a living, and I'm trained to act on my instincts. And but I do think that by asking me those questions, she was giving me permission, and she was asking me to step into that very tricky place. And I think that's why a lot of people feel uneasy there, because they don't know whether they're invited in. And I think that is an important piece, because I think people that have had extreme trauma, or just trauma, everyone's had some kind of trauma, but I mean, some people are so terrified, and they're so terrified that they don't know how to ask. And even when I talked to Hunter about, she tried so many times to get people to ask. And she's so grateful that I'm one of those people that she says that I have a bulldozer, and that my bulldozer comes in, and a bulldozer is about moving things. It's about picking things up and moving them, and moving big boulders out of the way, and displacing things. And one of the things in our film that we talk about is, when Hunter was raped at 7, it was a huge interruption in her innocence. It was a huge interruption in her life. And it was almost like I had to be just as big of an interruption to start the healing.
Yeah.
But she was ready for the healing, and she wanted the healing. And I wouldn't have ever been able to bring her what I brought her without her being as hungry to change and to grow and to move in this direction. And she calls me her shepherd. And, it's like I always say to her, like, you take direction so beautifully. Like, I just sort of lead, there's that saying, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink. I kept leading her to water holes and water holes and water holes. And she kept going, like, I'm going to drink from there. I'm going to drink from there. I'm going to drink from there, whenever it resonated with her. And I was always looking to her to see where it felt really true and resonant for her. But it just seemed like everything I brought to her just felt resonant. And I said, really, what my commitment was is I would be there with her. I would hold her hand through it, because it wasn't threatening to me in the same way it was threatening for her. And I knew that I had the passion, and I had the strength to be able to hold her through that, because I hadn't had that kind of trauma. And it was easy for me. She was smart and willing, and just always, I always tell her, so easy to love, And for me, it was just natural to keep on trying to find those things that are going to be that salve and that soothing, and that, and then she started being the person that was saying, let's go, let's do this. And I want to do this. And I want to revisit my childhood home. And I want to go, and all of these amazing things. And I just would say, great, let's do it. And I would make it happen. And, so that's what I would say to people. There's two pieces. One is you have to be sensitive to when people are asking, but also, like, know that sometimes people ask in a way that isn't asking. It's a way that is, they're just dipping their toe in because they're trying to feel if you're that person who's going to hear the request, and if you're going to be strong enough and brave enough to bring your bulldozer and then it's also in this greater scheme of things, statistically, with the rape statistics of like 1 in 4, you might be the one, but you might be part of the 4. You might be part of the other 3. And it's like, everybody has a skill set. And that's really what my documentary is about. It's not that it's a blueprint for how to do this healing. What it is it's an example of how 2 people came together, bringing what they had to go on this journey, which is just a unique journey to us. But because it is unique to us, it is universal in its invitation for others to do their own healing, because really everybody has skills to do this. And really all it takes is somebody who has who doesn't have a broken place to come together with someone who does have a broken place and say, we can do this together. Let's find our way. Let's find what makes us a unique team, a unique partnership, like in Dancing with the Stars. What is it that makes the partnership work? It's not necessarily that every partnership's going to work. And, you know, when you're dancing with somebody, it can be that that you're not really a great match. You know, it can be that too. And then you have to work really hard to make it work, because especially on Dancing with the Stars, because that's the one you got. So you got to make it work, you know? So I think it's that. It's like, just be sensitive, but also if you have any instinct that this person is calling for your help, just ask them. Do you want my help? Do you want my thoughts? Would you like to know what I'm thinking? Could I ask you some questions? Would you be open to me sharing something with you? Could we go to a therapist together? Could we talk this through? It's like, just ask, you know, start with that.
Yeah, I love that you say it's an invitation, because, you know, in society, whether it's trauma treatment, whether it's medical illness treatment, whatever it is, we have these prescriptions and we have these models, like this sort of one size fits all approach that we think is going to work for people, and it doesn't. We're so unique, we're so individual. And I love where, you know, you met her where she was at, and that is crucial. And then you figure out what uniquely inspires her and what her unique needs are. And she, like you said, what resonates. And that is such a gift when you can do that for someone else, because that really allows them to get post-traumatic growth, because it's coming truly from within them at a pace that is their own, and through this unconditional, you know, positive regard that, you know, we don't always get from our mothers, we don't always get from our parents growing up, and we lose that when we've experienced an assault of any sort, emotionally or physically. So I love that invitation, Melora. And, you know, you are obviously, you know, a brilliant storyteller, but the message of Thunder, Hunter, and Me seems to go to another level. And when people live with trauma, healing doesn't come from just telling a story. Healing happens when the victim can tell their story to someone who really sees them and understands, while holding them in this space of unconditional positive regard. And I have a feeling that one of the reasons your relationship with Hunter is so powerful is because you conveyed to Hunter, and I just heard you describe that you conveyed it, I see you, and your being here on this earth really matters to me. And I just, you know, wonder, like, do you agree with my observations?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, she, you know, she's remarkable, you know, and I'm grateful that I had the instinct to pick up the camera as early as I did, because what happened was I was just seeing this person who really, all she really needed was permission to grieve. Yeah. She needed permission to grieve, and she needed encouragement, and she needed to know that she wasn't going to die if she laid on her floor and cried for a week straight. And there was just a lot to overcome there. And when she would start to dip her toe into that, literally I would see 20 years fall off of her face, and just this incredible like tightness. And I often, you know, when I was younger, I used to say people look like what they are. And what I meant by that, I didn't mean like the beautiful people or the nice people and the, you know, it was more like if you look at people's features. Like I have a friend who had Asperger's when he was very young, now is a fully functioning adult. And I met him very young when he was still had some of those tendencies. And if you look at pictures of him when he was really more in the world of you know, growing out of the Asperger's, his features are very pointy and very, very intense and very sharp and very, like sharp cheekbones and sharp nose and, and as time has gone on and he's an older, just more sort of integrated person, his features have softened so much. And that was really what I saw happening with Hunter. And I just said to her, like, I think we should do this for you, because when I started this, I didn't think like, oh, we're making a documentary. And I said, you're not going to remember how trapped you were, because I can tell you're going to speed through this. You're going to move through this. It's going to happen. Like, I don't know how long it's going to take, but it's going to happen because you're so ready for it. You're so hungry for it. You want it so bad. And you're just, the penny is dropping left and right, left and right. I bring one thing and it's just like, bam, bam. She had 50 years of life experience that she was bringing. And so that made her just have this incredible intelligence that's just different from like an 18-year-old or 19-year-old. It's just different, which is another reason that I totally respect and love and honor age, because we do garner things from more life experience.
Yes.
And so it was literally like just a gift that I had the instinct to pick up the camera, that she said yes to me doing that. Mm-hmm. And that then as time went on, I would say, and I didn't look at any of the footage. Like we were filming for 2 years and I was just keeping everything, but I wasn't in director mode. I was just in like gathering mode, because what I was doing was I was taking care of her and she was my priority, and I was kind of mommying her, and really more than anything, and giving her love and guidance and whatever. But so it's true that I that is what happened. I was blown away by her intelligence, her emotional availability, and her vulnerability and ability to be raw and to be so brave. She was so brave from like minute number one. And I guess I was the person that spoke the truth to her in a way no one ever had, when she was spouting off stuff that was just like she'll tell a story about how she said to me very early on, like maybe the first time we were together, like here at my house alone, she said something like she didn't know that word, and I was like, what? Like, she's super smart, and I was like, that's a technique that you're using to like seem like the victim because you're committed to that because that's worked for you. But you're 50 years old, so just look up the word. And like, I'm not going to be that person that's going to buy you saying, I don't know that word. I'm going to say, look it up and then get back to me.
Yeah.
And so she had to kind of show up for me in a different way.
Yeah.
Just in the same way that I showed up for her in a different way,
Beautiful. Yeah. It's true reciprocity. There's a Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. He has a book called The Body Keeps the Score, and he talks about reciprocity, and it's true, that feeling of truly being seen and held in another person's heart. And I feel like, when we get that from another human, it's just there. You feel it. It's intangible. It's very real and pure. And it just, to me, this is, when I heard that the way that the story evolved was Hunter watched you on television as a child and wished your character Cindy would come through the television screen and rescue her. My first feeling was that's just such a universal feeling for those of us with trauma, because every one of us who has experienced trauma, we were children once. And if we lived through it to tell our stories, then we had a relationship in our lives that held our hands and really helped us survive. And, these relationships can be the community, an elder, a pet companion, pop star, television character. But since this experience with Hunter, I've thought about you and what that must have been like for you. And do you see your responsibilities as an actress differently?
Well, I think more than anything, I think as an actor, you feel like that is the most beautiful thing. As an adult actor, you think, oh, I hope I'm touching someone and moving them to think differently or ask a different question or feel some hope or feel some lightness or feel some sweetness or feel some laughter or have some joy, you know, as an adult. But what I think for me is cool is that that was a part that I had 2 weeks before said to my mom, you know what I really want to do is a show about a horse. And so Thunder is 2 weeks later, I got Thunder, and it's a show about a horse. And so it was a highlight in my young acting career as a child, because it really was a dream come true for me. It really was what I had really wanted, and I asked for out loud, and then I got it. And I've never been recognized from Thunder by anybody else in my life. And when I think about that, just from an adult perspective, like, yes, as an adult actor, you have all the consciousness and all the intelligence and intellectual, you know, stuff about touching people, moving people, whatever. And we as artists and poets and writers and musicians are supposed to be the people that make people question, make people go into the uncomfortable zone, or they watch us go into the uncomfortable zone. And because we're in the discomfort, we're comfortable being in discomfort, they can vicariously go into their own places of discomfort, joy, lightness, laughter, sensuality, sexuality, love, hate, revenge, all those things. But as a young child, I was just doing that out of pure joy, pure connection to what I wanted to do, this joyful delight of doing a show about a horse with this thing that I love to do, which was acting. And, you know, and that was it, nothing else. And so there's something so sweet and so wonderfully reconnecting for me about that. That is the thing that needs to be the generator of all great art. You have to be connected to your own personal, whatever the instigator is for that particular piece of art that you're involved in. Like for me with Dancing with the Stars, my intention was to reconnect with my child, the little girl joy of dancing, but it was also an opportunity for the world to get to know a little bit of Melora, not Melora through her characters, but who Melora is, which is why I was really committed to trying to bring my truth, even though it's a reality show, and reality shows are not documentaries. Reality shows are crafted. They are not real. They are the arc of the drama, and the entertainment is being shaped, and the narrative is being shaped in real time at all times. So it is not a real competition. It is not a real experience, but the experience of the dances, learning the dances under that kind of pressure, doing that and showing up that way for myself and for my partner and for the audience at large was real. Okay. And so those were my intentions for doing Dancing with the Stars. And I think that in those two places, I think I achieved those things. So I feel like I won, because for me, I just wanted to reignite my childhood joy of that and my dream of that feeling, which I got to do. And the joy of learning something that I've not done before. And then I wanted to share a little bit of my personal self so that people could see that this is who I am, and that maybe that would help them be able to digest Thunder Hunter and me a little bit better. Because, you know, if you're looking at me and you're only looking at me through the eyes of Jan Levinson, or through the eyes of Trudy Monk, or through the eyes of Tammy Cashman, or through, you know, my long career of characters, you don't know Melora. And I'm telling you, this documentary is just purely me. It's and Hunter. I mean, it's purely Hunter and me. And it's and it is not a comedy, but it is full of light, and it is full of love, and it is full of joy and healing and heart. So that was important to me. So the answer is yes. I think about myself, you know, in that way, of course, as an artist, but I also think that we have to just constantly stay true to like the center of our reason for doing what we did, what we've done, what we do.
Yeah, and I think you just described for me, because I'm a therapist and my work has been around. I have a chapter in my book about ballroom dance and why I think it's so healing. I found it really interesting when I learned about you doing this work with Hunter, because when you're a victim of trauma, like being able to inhabit your body is really like difficult, because it's a reminder of a place of pain, a place where you weren't safe, where you didn't have control. And so your story gives a voice to Hunter's journey and how she struggled with close relationships because of her trauma history. And this is the area that you saw and accepted her and, you know, gave her that love. But part of healing trauma is finding a way to be safe in your body again. And I think that's one of the most powerful aspects of ballroom dance, because you're with a partner, you're in this physical like proximity to a person, but you've got the music, the senses, and the movement all combined. And so I'm wondering, do you think now, because I've experienced that transformation of trauma from inhabiting my body in dance, what do you think about ballroom dance being able to help people overcome trauma now that you've danced in that setting?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything you said is so true. The experience of it was so intimate. It is a very intimate experience. I even said to Artem at one point, I said, you know, it's interesting that for me, I feel like this is more intimate than it would be for me to be naked doing a love scene with another actor. And he couldn't understand that because he's a dancer. He's a ballroom dancer. So for him, he was like, I don't understand that. That seems so much more intimate. You're naked, you're kissing someone, touching them. It's like, yeah, but as an actor, there are boundaries that I understand, you know, and those boundaries are very clear in my mind, very clear in my being. They make me feel safe. And whereas this is something I've never done, I don't understand the boundaries totally, you know, and so it's like, so I think absolutely that anything that can reacquaint you or just introduce you to a physical experience with another person that innately has in it boundaries, you know, then I think people with trauma in particular, and people without trauma, you know, that can have a deeper understanding of like, you get to have this very intimate relationship with your own physical body, with all these boundaries that are put in place to keep you safe. And so, you know, you can actually, once you start to understand the boundaries and you start to connect with the boundaries, then you start to feel that is what you can count on. You can count on that. And so when you're in the frame with somebody and you're like, you know, your hips have to be connected to their hips, but you understand that that's different than when there's a sexual act that's happening, or when, you know, when you're attracted to somebody. And I think for someone with trauma, then I would think, I mean, I don't know because I'm not a specialist in this, but I would think that would be very healing, because it would be like, oh, I have permission to feel my body close to another human's body without it meaning anything except that we're trying to create the correct form for the frame. Yeah. And that in doing that, we will have a better dance. So it seems to me like it could be very healing. And I think that's so cool that you have a chapter about that, because it sounds really really right on to me.
Yeah. So, Melora, I have to bring up your paso doble, because when you were talking about the thing that you accomplished about letting people see you, Melora, and that was also what they're going to see in the docuseries. So the paso doble, of course, embodies the essence of power, sexuality, confidence. So for many of us, it's difficult to find that balance among these different parts of ourselves. And I feel you were able to capture all of these shades in your paso doble. It was just like, wow, you just came out there. Femininity, sexuality, power, confidence, empowerment really affected me. And so I want to know, like, how did that dance in particular, or did that dance in particular change you somehow?
Well, it's interesting. It was a very, very exciting dance to learn, to do. It felt good, you know, as I was getting it, it felt good. I was particularly in a really good place in my own journey of Dancing with the Stars, which is a very personal, emotional journey of like stuff coming up and going away. And, you know, it just turns up so many things of your own personal stuff, belief systems and patterns and survival mechanisms. So I was in a really good place coming into that particular week of learning, because I had decided that that I just, you know, that I had sort of seen the tenuousness of the show, and how really you could just be ejected at any time from like this airplane that you're on. And
Yes.
and so I was really committed to, I want to have every single minute of this experience. I don't want to miss a minute of this. And so I was very present. When you're freed up like that and you're really present like that, you just can draw in everything, and everything's kind of dropping in. And there's a lot of unfettered learning that happens. It's very fluid and very flowy. And Artem is really good at the Paso Doble too. So I think I think he shines in that particular dance. And I think that, that also was good, because he's my teacher in that, and he was teaching me from the place that he connects to in that dance, which I think if you look at any of his dances from with other partners, you see that that is a place he shines. He just shines there. And so I think that was also super cool, because he's coming from a place of strength and confidence and experience and centeredness. And yeah, to me, it just was it was an amazing dance. The music was great. The costume was great. The set was great. I had come
Cape was
from
great. The skirt was great.
the skirt was amazing. And the skirt was like a giant thing, because I had come from, you know, having a little problem that happened with the week before, which was also very great for me. But I had been given, you know, on Dancing with the Stars, you're always just slightly, what's the word? You're always slightly in a little bit of deprivation. It's very different than any other experience that you would have as an artist, because usually when you're the artist in anything, when I was on Broadway or any, you know, everyone's always trying to give you what you need so that you can perform and be the star that you are. Mm-hmm. In Dancing with the Stars, everything is just not really what you need at all times. And that leads right up to the show, where you don't really have enough time you don't have any time on the ballroom floor. You don't have any time in your costume besides dress rehearsal, which is 1 hour before the actual live show. You know, whereas when you're doing Broadway, you get to work in your costume, you get to feel your, you know, the space in which you're going to work. You work with props, you work with, you know, you have all of that time. You get to eat, you know, at normal times, you know, like everything is slightly in a state of deprivation. It's part of how the show works. It's part of why it's successful as a competition show and as a reality show. So, so it's an interesting, you know, thing to grapple with. And one of the things I'm very grateful for my age again, because I have so much life experience that I could see this happening. And because it's not my first barbecue, I could be like, okay, so this is up to me, and how much, you know, how do I pace myself, and I had to do all that myself. So, so that's very interesting. But my point is that on Queen Night, which was the week before the Paso Doble, I had a dress rehearsal with that overlay, that velvet overlay that I was wearing for the Queen. It's very, very heavy. And so you as a dancer know that when you're dancing, you learn to turn, and you know where your center is when you land, based on what part of what it is what you're wearing on your feet and on your body. And so what I found in the dress rehearsal was that I would turn and land, and then my skirt would follow, and it would sort of like change my center.
Of course.
And though I was aware of it and able to work with it and able to grapple with it, it was fine. But it was definitely a thing to contend with, another thing to contend with on top of the 20 other things I have to contend with on Dancing with the Stars. So it was interesting. And then apparently the producers thought that my skirt was too high and they wanted to sew it. They wanted to sew it by like 5 inches. And I had a whole thing about, I had to get my finger in my skirt like this to get it, because I do a lot of stuff with my skirt in the Queen dance. So I had to get I had to get it usually on 1 count. I had to go in and get my skirt and have it to be able to do stuff with it. And so I went into like freak out mode between dress rehearsal and rehearsal. I mean, the live show, they sewed up my skirt by 5 inches. And I was worried I wasn't going to be able to get my hand in there, which I had practiced with my rehearsal skirt, which was up as high as it was. Oh my God. So It actually made me go blank at the end of the dance. I actually dropped a step, like dropping a line in a scene. I dropped a step. I just completely dropped a step, which was fine because it still worked out okay. Yeah. But when Carrie Ann said, I think something went off and I don't really know what it is, don't tell me, she was right. Something went off. And what went off was I dropped a step. I just dropped it. And what it was is it was right after I have to grab my skirt in that 1 count. And so I grabbed my skirt. I got the skirt, but as soon as I got the skirt, I dropped the step and went on to the next step. And it was just one thing. It was a balancé, so it didn't like mess up anything too much, but Artem had to completely shift. And then and I continued and then everything finished, but it was just, it's like, if I look back on it, it's like I'm laughing because I'm just looking at him go, okay, so I guess we're here now.
Many people get stuck in their comfortable routines and they will tell themselves, I can't do it. You know, I'm too old. So what would you tell those people who place limitations on themselves?
No, you're not. Like, I would just say, people there's that saying, follow your bliss. And I think that's a really good saying. People need to follow their bliss. And if there's something that they desire and that they want, then they should go after it. And there's no reason not to. People do incredible things all the time. And if you need inspiration, then find people who are doing those things, and let their they're living vicariously through them or whatever. Let that inspire you. So I would say, don't. It's okay to be scared, by the way. That's the other thing. Like, it's like, don't let your fear, that's a conversation for now too. But just, don't let your fear limit you. And fear is a great controller, as we can see with the pandemic. Sure. It's a great controller. And you have to know that, but we can't like stuff our fear down and pretend it doesn't exist. We have to actually confront it and deal with it and kind of wrap our arms around it, like almost like it's like the way you would deal with a little child having a nightmare, and we as adults, we're not so kind to ourselves as we would be to our child who has a nightmare. We're like, oh, just get over it and move on. It's like, well, no, that's going to make it so you can't do what you want to do. But if you wrap your arms around your own self and say, it's okay, it's appropriate that you would be scared. This is something you've never tried. I mean, if anyone thinks I wasn't scared on Dancing with the Stars, they're crazy. I was scared every single week, multiple times, while I was learning the dance, while I was doing the dance, while I was performing the dance, after. I mean, it was a constant relationship with fear and my fear. Yeah. So, and the other thing I tell my children is I tell them, like, nerves and excitement feel very similar. Mm-hmm. And you can let nerves, which equals pain, which equals fear, right? Nerves are really about fear. You can let nerves freeze you and stop you, but you can also use nerves. You can use them like excitement, and you can let them be rocket fuel and take you to the moon. So don't sit on your fear and act like it doesn't exist, or try to pretend it doesn't exist, and don't let it freeze you. Use it, let it, and connect to that feeling, because the feeling state of nerves is very similar to excitement. And if you just connect to the two and you just let it be that engine, it doesn't mean it's going to go away. You've got to include it. You can't try to push it away. You have to include it, embrace it, and let it be your rocket fuel for doing those things that you're scared to do.
Yeah, and I think it captures like ballroom dancing movement. A lot of times, a lot of the celebrities and the contestants, all of you, some of you would tear up, some of you would have these moments where you processed, grief through the dance. And I feel like that's the beauty of also dance, is that it brings you into touch with a lot of feelings that maybe we don't give ourselves permission to express. But because you've got sort of the safety of movement and music, which helps us get into more of a relaxed state, it allows people to have some emotional freeing. So
For sure.
I think you showed us that, Melora, along with a lot of other things on the show. And I'm really excited for your docuseries Thunder Hunter and Me to come out. And I'm just grateful that I was able to chat with you about two areas that are particular passions of mine. And you embodied sort of the coming together of them in, in a way that, really just really struck me. So I'm excited about that.
Thank you. Well, I'm excited for you to see it too. I can't wait for you to see it. It's very beautiful, and I really hope it will just inspire a lot of healing for a lot of people. That's my intention behind making it.